when Chris asked me to come talk at WDS, he asked me in March, and he said, look, I like your book. Would you want to come talk? And I'd always wanted to come to WDS. And this is going to be a weird way to start this talk, but I think I should have said no. I probably should have said no. And the reason is not, again, that I didn't want to come, and this isn't an awesome event, but in the last 6 months, I've been in 60 cities. Which I know a lot of you are world travelers. At 60 cities in 6 months is probably nothing compared to Chris or Cassie, who talked yesterday. Cassie's cat has probably been to 60 cities in the last 6 months. But it's a lot for me, and it's a lot for me especially because this is my backyard, and so whenever I leave, even coming to a place as great as Portland, I just kick myself like, why would I ever leave, right? And again, as great as Portland is. Compared to the cities that I tend to go to. I've been to Houston 9 times in the last 6 months, Des Moines and Topeka, and this is Madison, Wisconsin in late March of this year. I've been to Radnor Township, Pennsylvania. Not terrible places. I had a good time, but again, this is my front yard. This is my cow. His name is Bubba. He's a miniature Highland cow. This is my goat. His name is Watermelon. These are my 2 Great Pyrenees puppies. I hope you can take my word for it, but I've also got an 18-month-old that I feel like gives these puppies a run for their money in terms of cuteness. But my point for me is that. And maybe I would hope some of you guys would be able to relate to this in this room, but it's actually easier for me to say yes to stuff than it is to say no. My friend Austin Kleon, he has this great line. He says that when you're starting out being a writer or creative, you have to say yes to everything until you can afford to say no. But it's this sort of difficult transition. How do you know when you're there? And so if you're someone who's a hustler, who works hard, who's really driven, who's ambitious, who has these things you want to accomplish, it's really hard to pass on opportunities, right? Because you're sort of bred to say yes. You think that yes is what separates you from other people. And so for me, having my ass on the couch is less of a problem than me never being at home, right? And so I have this sort of compulsion to do, and it's something I really struggle with. I'll give you another example. I wear an Apple Watch. I have this goal. I try to do 1,000 calories. My move goal on my Apple Watch is 1,000 calories. So 1,000 calories of exercise or movement every single day. And sometimes I'll sort of get into a rhythm. I try to rest, but I'll get into a rhythm. And so earlier this year, I got into a rhythm of 36 consecutive days. So 1,000 calories of exercise for 36 days in a row. That was hard, but actually stopping on the 37th day was way harder than doing it on the 37th day. Each day, it actually got harder for me to stop because I had this game that I was winning, this streak that I was on. And so again, it's hard. It's really hard for me to do that. And I think there are people here who are driven, whether you're in corporate life, whether you're an entrepreneur, you sort of get so wrapped up in what you're doing, it's actually hard for you to regulate, to be sort of disciplined about your self-discipline, if that paradox makes sense. And so I finally did stop after 36 days. On the 37th day, I stopped. I said, this is crazy. I can't keep going. And look, I didn't get a trophy on the 37th day for this awesome streak. In fact, I came down with mono. I'd worn myself so out that I got mono. And it actually took me like 2 months to recover from. So this sort of pointless thing that I got so stuck on actually ends up preventing me from doing the things that I want to do. I was talking to my friend Brad Feld. He's this great startup investor. He's suffered from burnout and overwork himself. And he was saying, I was joking to him. I said, can you believe I got mono? Isn't this what like girls get with making out with the football team in high school? And he said, look, no, it's actually very serious. He said, mono equals Ryan wore himself out. And it's true. I wore my immune system down. I just worked too hard for too long. And again, it ends up being this problem for me. I couldn't write, I couldn't think, my mind was all messed up, and it was really hard. And so it reminds me of this wonderful quote from Bertrand Russell. He says, one of the symptoms of approaching nervous breakdown is the belief that one's work is terribly important. And of course, our work is important, our goals are important, But when we sort of get in this sway of ego and we're trying to beat everyone, to beat everything, when we believe we're sort of building this monument to all time, this is when we get ourselves in trouble because we're not thinking rationally or clearly anymore. And again, this is something that I struggle with. And so I have this belief that the quiet moments are the best moments in life. There's this wonderful speech you can see of Mr. Rogers. He gave an acceptance speech for winning an Emmy in 1997, and he gets up on stage, and so obviously, this being the Emmys, it's filled with talented, successful people, and he gets up there and he gives this magnificent speech. He says, look, everyone's going to come up here and they're going to talk. I'm going to do the opposite. He's like, I'd like everyone in this room to spend 10 seconds sitting silently to yourself, and all you can think about is someone who means a lot to you, someone who helped you along the way in your journey. And you can see the uncomfortable faces of everyone in the room. Again, these are people whose default is to do, not to sit and think, not to be sort of alone and quiet with themselves. Like if I was to ask you to stop for 10 seconds, this room would get real awkward real quickly. And you can see it in the video. It's really spectacular. And one of the things that's so wonderful about Mr. Rogers and such an important lesson that he taught kids was that kind of quiet, that stillness, this sort of slow, methodical, deliberate, sort of patient sort of understanding that sort of permeates his show. And he said that his sort of mission in life was to give people more of these quiet moments. And my favorite quiet moment, I get up early most mornings on my farm, and my son and I would go for a walk. We sort of walk on the dirt roads around our neighborhood. It snowed in Austin earlier this year, which is super weird. It never snows in Texas. So we go out for this walk, and look, he eats his applesauce, and he doesn't really appreciate what this moment is. But to me, it's this sort of stillness, this quiet reflection. I'm not checking email. I'm not listening to a podcast. I'm not doing anything. I'm just sort of fully very much in the moment. And we go and we see the animals. Sometimes we see armadillos and deer. We go see our donkeys. We pet the cows. We just sort of go and experience nature for a moment. And then we'll go, if we have time, we stop at the lake, and sometimes we'll fish, or we'll just sort of sit there and watch the sunrise. And it's this really, again, it's this sort of incredible experience. It's like my favorite part of my day. And so when I was prepping this talk, I was sort of thinking, well, if these moments are so important, and these are the moments that give us sort of profound meaning and sort of gratitude for what we have, well, what prevents them? Why don't we have more of them? They're something that we can all access at any moment. We could always have. They don't cost any money. And yet they're sort of exceedingly rare in our lives. And so what prevents these quiet moments? Well, one of the Stoics says this great line. He says, we sell things of great value for very little and vice versa. What he means is that we give up our time, which is this priceless asset, for things that don't really matter. And meanwhile, these very valuable experiences, since they don't seem like they cost money, we don't value them. We sort of say yes to things instinctively. We do because that's what we're supposed to do, but we don't actually question what they're worth. Seneca talks about how if your neighbor encroached on your property or someone stole money out of your wallet, you would be immediately upset and you would defend yourself and you would demand that cease and that reparations be made. And yet we let people steal our time from us and we don't think twice about it, right? If your neighbor built his fence on your property, you would object. But if your neighbor came over and wasted 30 minutes of your time talking about something that you didn't want to talk about, you just politely nod your head, right? And this is the paradox, because time is the most valuable resource. You could always get more property, but you can't get more time. And so he talks about how we sort of lay waste to our own lives. He says, life is long. We have so much time, but we also waste so much of it. And again, this is sort of the paradox of it and how little we have left to ourselves because of the things that we do. And when I think about one of the reasons that I do as much as I do, one of the things that I think drives me, probably destructively so, is comparisons with other people, right? I see what other people are doing. I see how much money they're making, or the places that they're going, or the awards that they're winning, or the cool accomplishments that they're racking up. And I go, well, I should have that too, right? I want what they have. I should compete with them. This is how I'm going to get better. And Seneca has this, unique definition of tranquility, which in Greek he translates as euthymia. And he talks about how we're sort of on this path, and we're walking on our path, but then there's all these paths that crisscross ours. And that this is confusing and overwhelming, right? If there was just one set of footprints, we'd know where to go. But since there's other footprints, it makes it harder. And he talks about how tranquility, how real peace is sort of having a confidence in yourself and the path that you're on. And he says, and to not be led astray by the paths that crisscross yours, that go close to yours, but ultimately are headed in a very different direction. And so it's this question that I think we need to spend those quiet moments thinking about, this idea of like, what is my path? What am I actually trying to do? I talk to lots of people and I go, look, what does an ideal day in your life look like? What are you trying to get to? Not what are you trying to accomplish, but what's the reward for all this? What does it look like in the future? If you could choose exactly what a day in your life looked like, what would it look like? And then the things that you're saying yes to, the things that you're doing, the people you're comparing yourself against, you've got to ask yourself, am I actually getting closer or further away from that, right? So this is really hard, especially for someone like me. When I get an opportunity, it might pay extraordinarily well, or it might take me to a cool place. Well, now I have to go, okay, but does this get me more of those quiet moments? Does it get me more moments, by myself or at my house? Does it get me closer to what I want my life to look like? And then you have to have this sort of discipline to actually, again, be disciplined about your discipline. And so who are your peers, right? Making sure that you're not comparing yourself against people who are running very different races, right? If you're doing a marathon and someone comes by, sprinting 200 or 300 yards, they're going to beat you, but you're on a totally different race. And so one of the things I learned as a runner is that I've got to know how far I'm running, what pace I'm keeping, and then I have to tune everyone else out unless those two things are in perfect alignment, and they rarely are. And so again, this sense of the race that you're on, the people that you should actually be measuring yourself against, gives you some of this clarity. And ultimately, ideally, there's no comparison at all. You're comparing yourself only against the potential that you have, the thing that you are trying to do, the person that you actually want to be. What I love so much about being a writer is that at the end of the day, it's just me and a blank page. I just sit there, and the struggle of the job, the leap you're making is trying to get this thing that's in your head on the page exactly how you want it to be. In my case, it's often on a note card. And as I was backstage, I was scribbling things on note cards, working on my next book. So this is the process. I'm not thinking about what other writers are doing. I'm not thinking how many copies other writers are selling or where their placement is relative to me on a bestseller list. I'm focused on what I'm trying to do on sort of being the best version of myself within that. And then, of course, if I'm honest, what really prevents the quiet moments, it's not simply a sort of drive or ambition. It's this device in our pocket, right? I use this app called Moment that tells me how much time I've spent on my phone every day. It's not a nice indictment typically, right? And so you'll see here, this is me. It's not totally accurate. Like, for instance, to me, if I'm listening to music but my phone is in my pocket, am I really on my phone? Or if I'm listening to a podcast, am I really on my phone even though I haven't seen it? I don't think so. But the point is, this is way too much time that I'm spending on my phone. And then I wonder why I don't have quiet moments, why I'm not at peace, right? Can you imagine anything less philosophical, less bigger picture than having this as your home screen, sort of missed calls and alerts and text messages and push notifications from stupid apps you never should have downloaded. No wonder we don't feel at peace. No wonder we don't have clarity and we can't see the big picture. We carry around, we pay a lot of money every month to have something that actively gets in the way of that, right? Again, an Apple Watch, do you really need an alert to tell you that half the United States is going to be cold? Probably not. And what action are you actually going to take on this information, right? But So one of the best decisions that I made is I sort of deleted every push notification. I have no social media apps on my phone. I might use it sort of deliberately when I'm sitting at my desktop when I'm working, but I'm not going to have this sort of thing just burning in my pocket, knowing that, hey, instead of being here and being quiet and focusing and thinking, I should just pull this up and see if anyone texts me. I should just see if anyone called me, right? And again, as a parent, this is extraordinarily difficult, right? The idea of just sort of watching a kid who's just experiencing the moment, who's fully present, this feels like the perfect opportunity to take this phone out, right? Even if it's just to take a picture of it. Instead of experiencing it, the phone tells us we should take a picture of it because that's experiencing it, right? If we didn't take a picture of it, it didn't happen, right? And so again, these are the kinds of things that prevent us from those moments. I don't want to get political, but this is a nice summary of Trump's media diet every morning. I could hardly think of a better way to be more miserable as a person than to consume not only this much news, but from these channels, right? And so no wonder he's upset all the time. No wonder he's tweeting angry things all the time. And then, of course, he passes that on to us. The amount of friends that I have that I'll talk to at 9 in the morning and they're already upset because something that somebody else who's not them tweeted angrily this morning. And again, this is preventing them from doing the things that they should be doing. This is a nice quote from some Facebook data scientists. They're like, look, we get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to make you spend more time on Facebook. It's like a casino. The reason there's no clocks in the casino, the reason it's at the perfect temperature, the reason they're giving you free drinks, the reason there's not many mirrors around is to make you feel like you're in some special place that feels so good that you lose all track of time and all sense of yourself, and then you keep doing what they want you to do. And Facebook is the same way. Look, the news business is the same way. Look, we've got to stop watching the news. I'm not saying we shouldn't be politically active. I went to the immigration march yesterday. I'm not saying we shouldn't take a stand on things that matter, but I'll give you an example. Last year in Texas, Hurricane Harvey hit, so I watched CNN. It was telling us about the storm. It was telling us whether we should evacuate. This was all helpful. But then a week later, Hurricane Irma came along. Why am I watching it? I don't live in Florida, right? There's still things I can do to help those people after the storm happens, but why am I watching a storm in real time that has nothing to do with me? I'm watching because it's entertainment, because it's been designed to make me feel like if I don't sit through this commercial break, something bad will happen and I will be an idiot and I will miss something, right? And these are what these people are paid to do, and so we have to sort of resist this kind of manipulation. And again, even 2,000 years ago, Epictetus was talking about how, look, if you want to improve, if you want to be the best version of yourself, you have to be okay saying, I don't know, or I don't care about that, or I'm not following that, or that doesn't relate to me. There's a certain amount of ego in thinking that we have to be the perfectly informed person who knows of everything that's happening everywhere in the world, or otherwise someone else might seem smarter than us, right? And again, what we should be thinking about is this bigger picture. This is the blue marble photo. It's one of the most famous photos of all time. How crazy is it that it wasn't until 1972 that it was even possible for humans to have this viewpoint, right? We now have it, right? And the astronauts who saw the Earth from this perspective for the first time, almost every person that's been in space has spoken about this. It's called the overview effect. And they say when you see the world from this distance, all your sort of petty cares and concerns go away, all the squabbles, all the fighting, you feel this sort of immense kinship with other people. You realize we're all sort of in this same thing together. He says, one of the astronauts, Edgar Mitchell, says, it makes you want to grab a politician by the scruff of their neck, and he says, look at this, you son of a bitch, what are you doing, right? And again, this is the bigger picture. Thank you. This is what we should be thinking about. This is what we should be taking time to consider, not the minute-by-minute breakdown of everything that's happening in the world. Again, I love sports, and it occurred to me that it's perfectly fine to watch football on Sunday, but why am I watching SportsCenter on Tuesday speculating about what may or may not happen on Sunday? It's going to figure itself out. So going out into nature, experiencing these bigger things, this is really important. You know, Marcus Aurelius talked about his version of the overview effect. He says, you know, watch the stars in their courses and imagine yourself alongside them. Think constantly on the changes of the elements into each other, for such thoughts wash away the dust of earthly life. They wash away petty jealousies, feelings of insecurity, feelings of needing to do more and more to be valuable. It allows you to see that bigger picture and calm down. There's a national park in Texas right outside Dallas. If you guys are ever there, you should 100% go to this. It's called Dinosaur National Monument. And you can wade out into this river and you can stand in a footprint left by a dinosaur 110 million years ago. This, of course, being Texas, there's a creationist museum not far from it that pretends that this didn't happen. But you know, when I stood in this footprint for the first time, this sort of immense feeling of calm washed over me, this sort of sense of, in some ways, the pointlessness of chasing some enormous legacy or fame. I mean, this dinosaur left more of a legacy for a longer amount of time than even the most successful person alive on the planet right now. And I get a similar feeling again when I walk out on my farm. This is my donkey. His name is Buddy. Austin, the short story writer O. Henry called Austin the city with a violet crown, and this is that crown you can see here. It's this beautiful thing, and I walk out and see him, and sometimes he comes and sees me. But when I saw him for the first time, he was just sort of standing there, not doing anything. I mean, on the one hand, so donkeys are livestock guarding animals, so having them around sort of keeps away bobcats and coyotes and mountain lions. But basically, he's just standing there, and I'm sort of laughing. This stupid animal is just standing there. What is he doing? He's been there. This has been like 20, 30 minutes. I'm just watching him. He hasn't moved. And then it occurred to me that he was doing his job, right? Like as an animal, his main job is just not to die in the course of a given day. If he doesn't die, that's success, right? That's a good day. He's not like comparing himself against like the neighbor's donkeys. He's not upset about what Donald Trump is tweeting. He's just chill. He's just alive, right? My therapist said to me one time, she said, it's human being, not human doing for a reason, right? And animals have sort of embraced this much more easily than humans have because we have this, gift curse of self-consciousness, of self-awareness. And so we can compare ourselves to other people, and we can think about things like our potential and whether we're doing what we're supposed to be doing and whether we're doing enough and whether we look good enough, whether other people are better than us, right? These are the sort of feelings of churning anxiety that I think work against us, that make us say no to the quiet moments that are so accessible, that are there for us if we just choose to take them. So the question then, to sort of bring this full circle for me is, so why did I say yes? First off, I love Chris. I love WDS. I love what all you guys are doing. This is an amazing audience. You should give yourself a round of applause. You've done an amazing job the last couple days. But one of the reasons I do say yes to things is that it takes me out of my comfort zone and it does expose me to things that I otherwise wouldn't have been exposed to. And earlier this February, when I was in Radnor Township, Pennsylvania, it was February, it was freezing cold, but I got up and I went for a run. I was about 2 or 3 miles in, and I found this small cemetery, and there's some Revolutionary War veterans buried there. So right in the middle of the neighborhood, it was really incredible. It's sort of dusted with snow, and there's Revolutionary War graves and early American settlers there and early patriots of this country. It was really spectacular. And then this one gravestone caught my eye. It was a woman who died in 1805, so she was born long before America was even a country. And what she has carved on her tombstone is this incredible verse. She says, verses on tombstones are but idly spent. The living character is the monument. And so there were a lot of spectacular monuments in this cemetery. There was, obelisks and statues and beautiful gravestones. And this sort of subtle one is in a way an indictment of all of that. It's an indictment of the idea that we need to build this monument to ourselves, that our fame matters, that being better than other people matters. What really matters is who you are in life and what you do for and with other people. That's what she was saying. Your character is what matters. The choices that you matter. The choices that you make matter. The things you believe matter. And I carry this coin sort of along these lines in my pocket. It's got a famous piece of Renaissance art on it. The Renaissance style is called vanitas, and it's this idea to sort of sober us and remind us of the vanity of so much of what we chase. It's always got these three elements, vanitas. It's got time, that's the hourglass. It's got the skull, that's death, and then the flower, which symbolizes life. And memento mori just means remember that you will die. Remember that you are mortal. And it's on the back, it has a line from Marcus Aurelius, which you see here. He says, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. And what he means is that life is very fragile. It can be taken from us at any moment. We could disappear at any moment. We could get hit by a bus. We could get a cancer diagnosis. This speech could be the last speech that I give. My flight home today could be the last flight I ever go, be my last conversation with my wife, could be the last email that I send. So some of these things are trivial, some of them are important, but how I do them matters, right? What I do matters. And when you think about the choices that you make, when you think about what you think about in the light of our sort of hanging or looming mortality, it puts them in a different perspective, right? If today was your last day on earth, you might do all of the same things that you're going to do today, but you would do them very differently, right? You would treat some things more seriously and you would let other things slide. I remember when I was at American Apparel, I decided to leave. I'd been really miserable, but I had about 6 months left that I had to work there. The day I told myself I was leaving, all the things that made me so miserable disappeared, right? Because now I realized that I wasn't going to endure them forever, that they didn't really matter. And this is a similar, this sort of meditation on our mortality has a similar effect, right? We don't need to take things so seriously. We don't need to be so insecure about them. We don't need to be so upset by them. We don't need to follow the news necessarily in real time because we understand these things are going to figure themselves out, right? And so I have this coin in my pocket and I touch it throughout the day when I find myself getting stressed, when I'm losing sight of that bigger picture. It's this sort of tangible reminder for me. And that's what Seneca is really talking about. Seneca thinks about death quite often. He writes about it in this sort of profound, moving way. He says, let us prepare our minds as if we'd come to the very end of life. Let us postpone nothing. Let us balance life's books every day. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. If we live, not as if we're going to die tomorrow, but if we live today as if it is the most important day of our life, then we'll make the right decisions. We will value the quiet moments, and we will have the power to say no to things that don't matter, whether they're sort of the distracting chatter of cable news or an opportunity that comes at the expense of some larger goal or principle that we stand for. And so the idea, I know this is sort of a sobering, weird thought to end a talk at a cheerful conference about, but we don't know how long we're going to be on this planet, right? Memento mori. We don't know how long we're going to be here. So we should enjoy those quiet moments while we can. We should seize them and take advantage of them. And then we should go about our lives with that never far from our view of never escaping us. The one who puts the finishing touches on their life each day is never short of time. So thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.